Good morning, everyone. Ombute Devi here. Or actually, it's not morning. It's probably noon. It's Sunday. This is Cacao Sunday for me. And I wanted to reach out and connect, update, and practice. We always do practice, of course. I love the practice. So I'm in the middle of doing a pilot program, and it's about coherence training to help us use these tools for self-regulation so that we can experience the person that we are in our hearts and not keep struggling and fighting so much with the person that we are in our minds. Because most times it's not really who we are in our minds that gives us joy, that brings us purpose and meaning. It's more about the experience of that frequency in our hearts. And so this is my cacao here. So this is what I'm passionate about. And it's a really selfish action, actually, because I needed it so much for myself. And so I wanted to just take you guys on a journey with me to really learn and understand how to actually and literally walk in to that experience of who you truly are, right? In the heart. Now, this universal, epic, human historical question of who we are, I have to tell you, at this age, I mean, I'm turning 60. I don't know if I should be telling everyone that, but I don't know. It's what I am. I find myself more challenged than ever to answer that question for myself. Who am I? Now, I have lived a very rich life. I have had many experiences, done many different things. Entertainment field, academia, been in clinic as a practitioner, have titles, all these things, but they're not me. They're experiences I've had, but they're not me. And I have to say, I don't really know where to hang my hat on or what to hang my hat on as who am I? And, traditions, the spiritual traditions is always sharing and pointing this truth of it's not about you answering it in a sentence, it's about you living it. And I think that this is true. I'm still living it. I'm still coming into a place of understanding for me. And when I ask Goddess, now when I speak of Goddess, I speak of Source. I speak of that source that has 1,000 names, and I happen to call her Goddess. I have personified the experience because this is my experience. She has touched me and woken me up in ways that I could have never ever done by myself. And it's been a struggle. It's not always that easy to wake up to a truth that only seems like being a truth in you, but not outside of you. When you can't find a resonance outside of you, you can't find people or places that reflects that resonance. And so it has been a real struggle. And it's fine. I've come to realize that I can say I am. That's about it. But I can't say what I am or who I am. I just know That is the truest is I am presence. I am here. Whatever I am here. I am present and I am feeling a lot. And when I speak deep into source, what I get a sense of and what I sometimes hear very clearly is that it's a frequency. Now, the first time I heard it, I got really pissed because I have always struggled with feeling like I don't belong. I didn't feel like I grew up in a place where I belonged. Everyone looked very different than me, thought very different, and spoke in different ways than I did. And I've lived in different cities, different countries, and I realized that it has nothing to do with the environment. Like, what was it about me, or still is, that I don't feel like I belong? There's no belonging. And I realized that it had to do with me landing. Really landing in my heart. And as I have understood through being on the other side, because it was very easy for me to have an awareness and be out of my body and be in other frequency dimensional spaces, which is part of the awakening process for me. But I realized that the only way that I live here in this body and on this planet and in this reality is through the heart. It's through the frequency of the heart. So it becomes very important for me now that I have understood some, and the science now, 30 years of research on the intelligence of the heart, which I have studied now in the last decade and a half. It's become a place of truth and a place of deeper exploration and a place for me to share within that context through that filter, because somehow it has landed. It's like we can measure. We can measure when we are in coherence, meaning that when we are in harmony, in optimal functioning, we can measure, and we have established a baseline for that. It's 0.1 hertz experience. And that lines up and trains with the coherence in nature, in the bigger heart frequency. So all of that to say that when I touch the source to inquire, to find ground, all I kept hearing was, it's a frequency. Home is a frequency. And so I didn't understand it, but now a little bit later in life, I'm starting to understand what it is. And I've learned it through really understanding the philosophy and what we have come up with, the science. And that is that your energy, your pure energy and light, and how that energy and light moves, the frequency, the particular frequency signature, that's what you are. That's what we are. That's, from my point of view and from my filter and from my experience, that is the truest I can say that I have experienced that I am. It's a frequency. And you probably have noticed that I have Ramakrishna on my walls. And it's a beautiful legacy that I got from my teacher, my spiritual teacher, Sally Kempton, who passed away almost 2 years ago. He was a dear friend of mine and a sister in the ecstatic reality. And when I was caring for her and staying at her house when in her last years, just for a few, she needed help sometimes, and we all do, right? And so I was staying with her for a while. And this experience, I had no experience with Ramakrishna. he came to me, and I had another awakening. And I remember, and she's seen it all, been it, done that, been there, so to speak, because she, spent 30 years in an ashram, and, was a monk. And so she's seen it all. So she said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just, I can see what you're going through. You're flopping on the floor again, and tears are coming out, and you're smiling and crying and raging at the same time." And I kept saying, "What is this?" Every time I look at this picture of this man, I go into this ecstatic experience. And so this is why when she passed, because she said, "These are your pictures." So I have them here as a reminder and as a guide, because that frequency, Ramakrishna, still comes and reminds me of my throat chakra, speaking my truth, and that it has to come from a place deep within. And he said to me, "Blue note of fire." This is a lot. I mean, this is, Cacao Sunday. This is what I'm sharing with you. And some of you were just like, "What the fuck is she talking about?" And some might have had similar experiences. So for the one person that might relate to this, ditto, right? So Ramakrishna would say, "Blue note of fire, blue notes of fire, blue notes of fire." Now, this was about 5 years ago, I think now. About 5 years ago, almost. 4 or 5 years. And I didn't know what that meant. But I have come through experience being in deep meditation, being in ecstatic states, and having my frequency, having my consciousness, having my soul remind me of the expanded truth that I sit in, that I walk in, that I breathe in, and that I play in. And it's blue. The color, so it's like my North Star. So when I go into it, I follow that blue. It's like a blue pilot light. And it reminds me, we all have little reminders. And so it is a frequency. Wow, this is a long explanation or sharing of how the complexity and how the paradoxes can be experienced and held with softness and allowance, without judgment or trying to figure something out, because I have given up trying to figure things out. But allowing myself to be open so that I can have an experience, and then that experience informs me. And that's what we call gnosis. That's what we call gnosis. So we can learn a lot from other people, from reading, from lectures and all that. But until we do it, until we are it, until we have the experience, that's when the knowing. That's the knowing. Right? That's the knowing. So I am sharing my knowing, whether it is something that seems natural or relevant or even probable for some of you. Yeah, well, we're all different, right? So, yes, practice, why I'm doing the Heart Matters, why I'm doing this practice, because it's tangible. It's tangible. It's based on science. It's based on clinical trials and errors. It's used in all kinds of sectors, in politics, in sports, in performance, in hospitals, in education. It's used wherever there is a heart that is needing the person to come into balance so that they can touch their optimal healthy functioning, so that they can live a life with more ease and greater access to their own intuitive truth, and be guided from within especially now when we have these times where shit's going down. And so how do we rise then? We can only rise from within. We can only rise from a truth that we know. And sometimes we have doubts. We have doubts. And that's why this class is important. That's why this community that I want to support is important, because we have to remind each other, we have to inspire each other, we have to see each other, we have to hear each other, we have to hold each other. And we can do that in this collective heart space. There's an actual frequency there that nourishes us, that supports us, if we intentionally start to subscribe to it. And this has been proven. So, and I can point to the research, but I won't do it now because I don't have the links and all of that. But it's there. It's all there. And this is why I love it, because I am a born skeptic. I don't believe anything until it happened to me. My whole family on my mother's side was, atheists. It's just, God was for people that were weak, that needed something else to believe in except themselves. That's kind of how I was raised. And then on my father's side, he was a Trinidadian, and unfortunately, I didn't grow up with him. They were Catholic. And I realized when I connected with my father later in life that there was so much about him that was in me. And that was a deep, deep, deep resonance with something much greater than myself. And a knowing that I was being held and supported and guided if I chose to be still and listen, if I chose to let go of attachment to the things outside of me that I thought was my source. So, here a little bit more cacao. So we're going to do a practice. This week it has been a real challenge for me. We all have our really dark and heavy moments, and then, as dark and deep we can go, as high and light we can go. That's the spectrum. So if you feel really deep and heavy and dark, then that means that the opposite is true too. Absolutely. And for people that don't feel anything, that are just numb, it's harder. I wanted to, and so also I realized, I said, okay, for people that are like me, that have a little bit of sensitivity. Now, there's this, what they call the personality type, HSP, a highly sensitive person. And so what did they say here? This is from Psychology Today. It is that it's a person that is more sensitive to physical, emotional, and social stimuli. It's called a sensory processing sensitivity. And why am I saying this? Because I happen to be one of those people. And the characteristics is you're usually overwhelmed through your senses. You process information through all your senses. So any kind of sensory input, bright lights, strong smells, hard voices, people with a lot of, intensity or rage, or those lower energies, it really, really bothers you. This is why I stopped looking at media and news years ago. Because it crushed me to see what people are doing to animals. It crushed me to see, and still breaks me to see what people are doing to each other. I cannot breathe looking at images where people are in that place. It breaks me to the core. Not just in my intellect going, oh, that's a bad thing. It comes into my core, and it is excruciatingly painful, right? And so holding it, we hold a lot. So not if you're only highly sensitive, if you're an empath, you hold other people's pain, you hold other people's struggle, And I've been doing it all my life. So I know how it is. And I know how once we start to wake up, to become more self-regulated and be more intelligent about how we actually manage our energy. This is why Heart Matters is so important, because we have to learn how to manage this highly sensitive energy, and how we are able to then process information. And so it goes on and goes on, and it talks about how, how to thrive, It talks about how to be able to recognize our emotions. And in the Heart Matters, we have to start with awareness. We always look at building awareness about where we are, what's running in us, so that we can then access and activate a renewal emotion, a heart emotion, to have that run in us, to then affect global coherence within us, right? And it says practicing self-compassion, directing kindness and gratitude towards self instead of self-criticism. And this is how we pour love on ourselves, right? In the Heart Matters, we learn how to pour love on ourselves, right? And so this is something that we most of us don't learn how to do early on. So all of this, I feel, is a great reason why to learn how to walk in to our heart, to have the experience of who we are in our hearts. And the big picture, so we can thrive, so we can build resilience emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, so that we can cultivate this deeper relation with self and allow our heart to be a guide in our lives, to intuitively have this, trust our intuition, right? To have this courage to actually act on that, right? So important. And so that our baseline for change is supporting us, right? I think it's Einstein that said you cannot solve a problem from the place that created it, something like that. It's the same thing. Today, the prevailing, consciousness is really more anchored in these lower frequencies of fear and control and separation. And coming into coherence and accessing the heart has everything and anything to do with higher frequencies and higher states of being, calming the mind so we can come in to these qualities and allow our frontal cortex to have access to the frontal cortex and not be stuck in the amygdala. It's so important. It's so important so that we can self-regulate, so that we can respond accordingly instead of react. And that we respond to something that is deeper and greater than just the superficial, place of our mind. There are layers of this mind, right? And so being in the heart mind is what I'm talking about. Yeah. So this week, I was struggling. I was struggling with that. I was struggling, and like I said again, coming back to who am I couldn't for the life of me, I was in a situation where I was, my environment was just really hard to deal with. And I just couldn't find myself. And I was and I started to just say, okay, I'm just going to start to do a very easy activation. And so this is what we're going to do. This is what I did. I'm going to share it. And it really helps. And even if in that moment, it was just like I had to keep repeating it, I didn't feel a change. I didn't feel a change. But whenever I came into that pain and that, frustration, I just kept repeating and breathing. And I touched my heart, and I brought my awareness and attention to my heart. And I started breathing in my divinity. So I said, I'm going to breathe in my divinity, because whatever I was in, I knew that my divinity is where I needed to be, is what I needed to touch, is what I needed to connect, is what I needed to have all my cells in my body remind themselves of. Remember, the remembrance of who that frequency is, what that frequency is. Now, here, now, in the presence. So that's what I did. So let's go. Let's come in and breathe in. So just say, I'm breathing in my divinity. And I breathe out all that is not. And you breathe in and you imagine, you sense, you intend to breathe in and out from the area of your heart, from the center of your chest. And so for me, sometimes I have to just touch my heart to help to just guide the energies down, to remind my body that this is where my temple is. And so we breathe in divinity. And we breathe out all that is not. And breathe in your divinity. And breathe out all that is not. Because sometimes we don't even know what's up or down or left or right. We can't figure it out. Like, what is it that is in my way? What do I have to let go of? What do I have to embrace? And this is sort of like the base camp. Like, this is how we come in, right, to the divinity, to the place of us deep within our hearts that holds humanity in us, right? So by accessing this, opening up our breath and breathing in our divinity and breathing out all that is not. And I said, I was walking this. I kept saying, I'm breathing in my divinity. I'm exhaling all that is not. I breathe in my divinity. I exhale all that is not. And 24/7, I was doing this. Because I was feeling that bad, and I was coming into this, my body was having an anxiety experience, and I knew, like, I had to shift. I had to really become present to what was running in me. I didn't have to analyze or figure out why it was doing it. I just knew I had to get out of it. I just had to shift this internal climate. And this is how I did it. And I kept breathing in my divinity and exhaling all that is not. That's all I could do. Breathe in my divinity and breathe out all that is not. And as often as I could remember to do that, I did that. And I felt like I had a little bit of control. I wasn't feeling great still. But I just said, okay, whatever's running in me, whatever's going on, I'm going to just keep doing it because I trust in this. I know it works. And I'm going to do it until something happens. Well, I did it going to bed. And it was like, okay, kept doing it. And I finally went to bed and slept. And I got to tell you, the next day I woke up and I got on my monitor, my heart I have a program that there's a monitor sensor where you can monitor your heart rate variability and see if you are in coherence, meaning if you are in 0.1 hertz. I hooked myself up and I said, okay, where am I today? But I already knew, because the minute I opened my eyes, I knew something had shifted. I knew I was in a better place. So I hooked myself up, and yes, I hooked myself up, and I hadn't even started running anything consciously. I was just being, and I was in the green, meaning the green represented a coherent state that I had already come into balance. So my point is, it's a carryover. That whole day of feeling like shit, feeling like I was in a big hole of poo, and just keep breathing in my divinity, exhaling out all that is not, breathing in my divinity, exhaling out all that is not through the area of my heart, as much as I could, as often as I remembered, had shifted. And it's a carryover, right? Because this is your biology. Because the reason why when we get sick, when we get in a balance, dis-ease, when we come out of balance, we might feel like crap. But if we're resting, if we're doing the right things, eating, sleeping, doing, taking fluids or whatever, that day we're caring for ourselves because we are anticipating that the next day is going to be better, right? We're doing this to steward ourselves, to take of ourselves. And this is exactly it. So sometimes shifting into a coherent state, you might not be experiencing the benefit yet. You might not have the gain, like subjective gain of like, oh, I feel great already, until the next day. So this is what I encourage you to do. Like, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your heart. Don't give up on your biology. That is the highest technology for you to change and transform. And transform means that we are opening up these limited perspectives, internal perspectives of ourselves, these limited memories of ourselves. We're opening up the cellular memory for higher functioning. This is what's so important. And this is a lot, and these practices are very simple and very profound, but you have to do them. You have to do them. So I'm sharing with you my experience with this week, what I used, the tool that helped me shift. Again, breathe in your divinity and breathe out all that is not. And I hope and wish for you this week, this Sunday, that you can come into a place of grounding in your own divinity, in your own truth, in your own dignity of you, no matter what you think you are, but feel the presence. Feel the presence. If you feel like shit, it's because you know what the opposite feels like. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to recognize it. If you're deep in poo, you only know that you're deep in poo because you know what it is to be lighter and in an ecstatic and joyous place. You have been there, right? And so you know the paradox, you know the opposite. And how we hold it, because life is life, comes and goes. But how we hold it, how we inspire each other, how we see each other and confirm each other, no matter who you are, what you are doing, you have a heart. And that is my commitment. That is my commitment to share these practices, to share these stories, to share my humanity and how I touch my divinity as often as I can, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And so I send so much love to you, so much love here. Ombute Devi. I hope I see you next Sunday. Bye for now.